Hello, and you are back in the Velvet Room with Jokerthefool. This is our 78th episode, and today we'll be discussing the NHS is moving towards reality and that they're criminalizing you for telling the truth. So, I'm going to get right into this with an article from freespeechunion.org. Sex is a biological fact, NHS declares in a landmark pushback against gender ideology. So, there's an NHS constitution. If you don't know what the NHS is, that's the National Health Service. So that's the socialized medicine in the United Kingdom. So if you're a UK citizen, you pay into the tax system, you get access to the NHS. And of course, being an anarcho-capitalist, I'm against socialized medicine, all this sort of stuff. But that's not what this section of this podcast is about. I'm not going to debate about public health care and all getting into the nuts and bolts of that. What this is about is the National Health Service having to update its constitution. They have to do that at least every 10 years. Last time it was in 2015, so they're doing it in 24, right? You know, at that spot where they have to do it. And new constitution will state we are defining sex as biological sex. And of course, you've got a bunch of campaigners for women's rights who are saying, you know, this is a return to common sense. This is a very logical thing to do. You say that sex is based on the biological reality of what gametes you produce, what gonads you have, what genitals you have. It's a very clear binary, and again, this would make it so that the NHS, so all these public hospitals that are owned by the NHS, owned by the state, or these private and third-party services that provide NHS services have to abide by this constitution. So if there are single-sex spaces in these hospital wards, they actually have to only let in women. So you can't be a man who claims to be a woman and get into these women's spaces, right? And that's the bigger concern. It's not, it's not necessarily the other way around. There really isn't much of a concern with these, you'll have these trans men saying, well, I pass as a man, so I shouldn't be allowed in the women's ward, and vice versa. And that's really one of these arguments that a lot of gender ideologues will make and they'll cling to, is that transition is more valid if you can pass. And of course, it conflicts with the fact that if you feel like you are the opposite sex, you're a man who feels like a woman, then you are a woman, and that's what takes precedence. But of course, they'll use the fact that you've got some who can pass as, and they'll appear to be the opposite sex. They can function as the opposite sex in the vast majority of social interactions as a way to make transgenderism more legitimate than it actually is. But the NHS seems to be inching towards reality. Of course, you had the CAS review, which said that transition for children wasn't a good thing, laid out a good case. From as far as I understand, I didn't go through it. The book that I wrote, which I finished, I handed it off to an editor. Very nice. I didn't use the CAS review as a citation. It came out a little bit too late. I don't think I needed to, and a lot of the stuff it covers is stuff that is basically out there. It's really just affirming the fact that the transition for children is not a good thing, that gender ideology is deeply harmful to society. These are things that the information is out there. If you look for it, again, I will be presenting this to all of you who go ahead and decide to read it. When I release it, I'll have a lot of that information. My arguments for why gender ideology is bad, my arguments for why what the NHS is doing is actually something that I support. Now, could the NHS say, hey, we're updating our constitution, it's going to be like this? There's this pushback from these, gender ideologues, all these Richards who actually want to be Rachel and saying, I need to be in the woman's bathroom. If I'm don't get access to the women's ward in the hospital, then that's an act of genocide. It was what India Wallaby is a big activist in the UK for transgenderism, and of course of course, that person is going to be very much against this. And again, you'll have all this, pushback against it. And they'll say, oh, we had all this pushback and we had to, change things up and make this decision. That could be the case. Hopefully it isn't. Hopefully the NHS codifies sex as biological sex, as we basically always have known it until very recently. Go back to that. And the NHS has to abide by biological sex being the reality of the world, and that would be a fantastic thing. It'll be a great thing for the NHS to do, and really it's really going back to square one in terms of societal progress. It's like this is something we should understand, that men are men and women are women, and that they're different, and that they need different accommodations in society. It's a very simple thing, but of course we've lost that to push gender ideology onto the people for a bunch of reasons, but that's really my take on it. This is a good thing. We'll see if it sticks. We'll see if they don't roll back on this. You've got a lot of gender ideologues who are very passionate activists, and they know how to do activism, all these sorts of things. So this could also be a bit of a psyop where they make this push and then roll back to demoralize the TERFs, or the people who are gender critical, or as I would like to say, the people who actually affirm reality. But that's all I really have to say about this topic. We're heading into the next one. Thanks for listening and sticking with me. So if you are still sticking with me, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. I love it when you do that. But we're heading into the next article for the next section. This is about how they're still trying to criminalize you. And this is a headline from Evol News that reads, 2021 COVID vaccine comments lead to suspension of New Zealand nurse. Now, I only found this on Evol News, so I can't confirm if this actually happened, but considering the fact that New Zealand locked down the country over one case of COVID and all the draconian COVID nonsense that New Zealand and Australia did, and are basically still doing to some degree, I would think, or to my knowledge, I'm not the most well versed on the Kiwis or the Aussies, so I could be wrong. I know there's been this big rollback, but for the most part, as far as I know, COVID gripped these two nations, New Zealand and Australia, the hardest in terms of the lockdowns. They really went iron fist. And you had this nurse, Deborah Green, who was suspended for 3 months and fined $18,000 after being charged with professional misconduct. The charges stem from comments she made during an anti-COVID vaccine mandate protest in 2021. Green claimed in an interview that she had witnessed numerous adverse vaccine reactions, that unvaccinated patients were being segregated, and that her colleagues were blind to the issue. Basically, health practitioners disciplinary tribunal found that Green had brought discredit to the profession and had the potential to undermine the public trust in the healthcare system and nursing profession. Green's nurse registration was suspended, and she was ordered to complete 2 courses, obtain professional supervision for 12 months, and disclose the tribunal's decision to any current or potential employers if she wishes to continue practicing. It's basically just trying to shut her out of the ability to be part of the medical community, because she basically saw reality for what it was. Now, the tribunal did not assess the factual accuracy of Green's comments, but ruled that they lacked sincerity and meaningful content. So, of course, she defended her comments as free expression, but apologized for exaggerating her concerns. The tribunal determined that while freedom of expression was engaged, it was not protected under the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act due to Green's professional responsibilities during a public health emergency. And that's one of the big things, is that with these emergencies, they can take away your rights. And if they can take away your rights for an emergency, they're going to make emergencies up to do just that. Now, like I said, I could only find this on Evol News, so I'm not sure how true this is, if this is exactly how it happened. But if it is, it's a really spicy one. Like I said, given New Zealand's track record on COVID and their really censorious, authoritarian nature with a lot of things, it was the Christchurch shooting that really accentuated that fact, as well as how censorious they can be. I would not be surprised if this has actually happened. And now, what she's saying is that saw all of these health issues that are brought about from the vaccine, adverse vaccine reactions, right? And a lot of gaslighting has happened. This isn't happening. It's extremely rare. It's absolutely meaningless. Vaccines are safe and effective. I mean, that's, the 2 words. I guess free. Or safe and effective. That's 3 words. We all heard from 21 to sometime around the end of 22, when they really abandoned the max vaccination campaign. It's safe and effective. Just take it. Just get the jab, and everything will return to normal. And of course, they're criminalizing this woman, Deborah Green, if this is true, for stating something that is actually true. And the vaccines have adverse reactions, right? And you don't have to take my word for it. Take AstraZeneca's, because I've got another article from the Telegraph. AstraZeneca admits its COVID vaccine can cause rare side effect in court documents for first time. Now, of course, they're going to say, these adverse reactions happen. They're not nearly as common as people make them out to be, and that's true to some extent. It's not, like everybody's dropping dead. You've got millions and millions of people who have gotten these vaccines, and most of them haven't had like these severe adverse reactions. So this article highlights Jamie Scott was left with a permanent brain injury after having a hemorrhage the day after the COVID vaccine. So you see all the blood clots, like we've seen, died suddenly. All these blood clots that form in people's bodies, and this hemorrhaging and the formations of cancers. And this is AstraZeneca basically saying, yeah, this is actually happening, because they have a class action lawsuit filed against AstraZeneca, or against people are filing a class action lawsuit against AstraZeneca. And this was it was developed with the University of Oxford and AstraZeneca for not America. It was not approved in America. It was given in the UK. So this was Jamie Scott, man who got a brain hemorrhage the day after, left with permanent brain damage because of that. Is basically suing, and there's a bunch of other people who are part of this, and it could be worth up to 100 million pounds. So I think this is actually happening in the UK. So again, I mentioned this with the MI5 getting sued over the Ariana Grande concert. These lawsuits take months to years. That's the timeline for this to play out. So it could be like near the end of this decade where we see the decision of this actually come through. But the fact that in court, right, of course, AstraZeneca is going to contest the claims, but has accepted in a legal document submitted to the High Court in February that its COVID vaccine can, in very rare cases, cause TTS, which is thrombosis with thrombocytopenia syndrome. That's like a blood clot in the brain, I believe. That's what it's referring to. But again, the fact that the vaccines have given people adverse reactions is reality. That is something that's happened. AstraZeneca is admitting to this, and again, a lot of this comes from the spike protein that the vaccines make your body replicate, so that way your body forms antibodies against those, which in theory, when you encounter the virus in the wild, should give you that protection. A lot of times it doesn't. If you see how bad the efficacy rates were plummeting, especially when you were factoring in real world data of people actually getting them and like following up on this, not just these randomized control trials, which a lot of them weren't conducted correctly. I think it was the British Medicine Journal had a whistleblower basically saying that about Pfizer's vaccine. So it is true that the vaccines cause adverse reactions. So this nurse, Deborah Green, will most likely see these, speak up about it, and then you're getting criminalized for stating reality, right? And this is the thing, is that if they have an agenda, they're going to go full force on the agenda, and they will do whatever they can to push that agenda onto people. They're going to propagandize, they're going to gaslight. This is basically a mass gaslighting campaign where they're criminalizing her for saying like, well, I saw this going on where I had patients that were vaccinated, had these adverse effects, and it seemed to be due to the vaccine, and I'm just speaking about that plainly and clearly, and you're getting punished for it because the state wants people to be vaccinated. The state wants people to follow what the medical community says when the medical community says to comply with the mandates, get these treatments, do all the COVID nonsense. It's going to be one of the arms that they use to push the new world globalist order onto people, is the medical community doing these vaccines and all this these pharmaceuticals that they push on the people, especially in the US. So there's a lot of stuff the medical community can do to push authoritarianism on the people, and that can only happen if people trust the medical community. And of course, if you have stuff like this vaccine that everybody had to take, basically, or everyone was at least coerced to taking it if you were in a first world country. And then you have it. We found out that these vaccines cause severe adverse reactions to a good number of people, and those people who made those vaccines are completely barred from liability, right? It's going to leave a bad taste in people's mouths, and it's going to make people distrustful of the medical community. It's one of the things that really woke me up. Basically, I would say it's the thing that woke me up. It's all this COVID nonsense. It's why I don't trust the state. It's why I don't trust the medical community. It's why I don't trust anyone who is in any sort of legacy institution, is because of what happened with the COVID lockdown. It's not COVID itself, the virus and all that stuff, but it's the state's response to it and all the stuff that's been happening afterwards, and all the stuff that happened beforehand really makes sense when you accept that there are people who are planning and trying to bring about the demise of society to enrich themselves. Talked about this a lot. I do think this is very indicative of it, and I think they're going to use the power of the state to tell the people who try to speak truth to power and criminalize them for it. And that's really what I have to say. So just keep that in mind, is that there are people who know what the truth is. They're going to say what the truth is, and the state's going to say, no, you can't say that, you're getting punished. But I've been talking for a long time, it's nearly 20 minutes, a bit longer than what I usually do. It's usually below 15, but thanks for sticking with me for all my inane rambling. The next free episode will be on Tuesday, a paid episode on Friday, which is tomorrow, and we're going into the outro now. Thank you for being in the Velvet Room with Joker the Fool. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, whether you're listening on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, or Substack. And be sure to subscribe to my Substack, velvetroompublishing.substack.com, to keep up with Machine to Man and all my other projects.